Hey everyone, my name is Chris Curran, and so tonight I'm really excited to have you guys join us tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about service, both what service means to us and to our fraternity. We'll cover some of the positions that routinely deal with service and some of the responsibilities, and share a couple tips of how you can be the best at whether it's service chair, officer, vice president of programs that you can be. So my name is Chris Kern, and I'm an alumni of the Beta Omicron chapter at Arizona State University, one of the Founder Circle team members, which we'll talk about a little bit towards the end. And I look forward to chatting with y'all tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Paula Kaiser. I currently serve as the chair of the newly formed Membership and Chapter Support Committee. I'm super excited for this biennium to be able to work with brothers across the district or across the nation. And I previously served as the chair of the Curriculum Committee for the past biennium. I am a life member of the Iota Lambda chapter at the University of Mount Union in the North Central District. And I'm very excited to have you guys all on here tonight. We were actually talking beforehand. I said I'm super excited to kind of see the makeup of positions that are going to come out tonight because I know every chapter's service chairs look a little bit different. So I'm very excited to have some great conversations tonight. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it back to Chris.
Perfect. So I'll cover a little bit of the agenda today, and then we'll dive right into it. So we'll start off by talking about what service is. We'll talk about how we can select some worthwhile projects as opposed to all the things being thrown your way as a service chair, how you can bring those projects to life, and then just take a step back and focus on the overall year that you'll have as a service officer. Then we'll wrap it up with some of the fraternity resources and responsibilities to help you be as successful as possible. And we'll turn it over to some Q&A to answer any questions you all have along the way. So as we're doing this, I have a question for you all, and I encourage you guys to answer this in the chat or come off mute. What is service, and what does service even mean to you guys? So I'll give you a couple of seconds to throw some answers in the chat, or if anyone's feeling brave, come off mute and share your thoughts. And Kristen and Paula, with the sharing my screen, I don't see the chat at the moment. So if you see anything, please read it out, and that'll save me a little bit of having multiple things open in different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now it looks like hopefully people are typing.
Yep.
So stay tuned for
Yeah,
just a
no
moment.
worries. So while you guys are typing there, I'll give a little bit of kind of an intro into this and give you guys some time to type. Is striving for your highest. So as we're going into this presentation, I want to remind you all that the goal is to strive for your highest, not for perfection. As we're going through, remember that your chapter functions best when you have a clear understanding of your own system, your own chapter's system, and your own chapter's expectations. We're going to give you guys some best tips and tricks that we can think of, but every situation is a little bit different. So I'd encourage you guys to come and be open to all the information you're going to get tonight, but also remember that your situation may be a little different. And if we say something that you think, gee, would that work for us? Or I don't know if that's going to work for us, save those questions for Q&A, and we'd be happy to maybe, with your specific situation, give a little bit of a tweak or help you with any unique situations that your chapter may be facing. And
So,
go for it.
Chris, it looks like we do have some comments in the chat. So,
Perfect.
Ali, it looks like said, for me, service is helping out for our music community to the best of our ability while fostering a compassionate and understanding environment for everyone around. I love that definition. Also, partially because I'm an English teacher, so that sounded amazing. But I also think that truly encompasses all aspects of service. And I love the part of understanding the environment, creating a understanding and compassionate environment for everyone. Because I think that's also a part that sometimes gets missed as well when it comes to service. So, excellent answer.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so I'll get on to this next slide about kind of another way to interpret service. Last thing I want to touch on for this before we dive into that, and thank you for your the responses, is remember to focus on self-care as we're entering into the school year. I know that when I was a college student, I'm sure you all have earned the same boat. There's so much going on in your life, whether it's classes, jobs, responsibilities, family life, band. There's just a lot on your plate pulling at your attention every day. So I really encourage you all to be sure you're prioritizing yourself and your self-care. While we love Kappa Kappa Psi and everything that it means to us, we don't want you spread yourself too thin and get in a situation where because you're a brother, you're not able to take care of yourself. So we really encourage you guys to really think about your self-care techniques and make them known to the brothers you're working with so you can take care of yourself so that you're in your best spot to take care of your chapter and do the service that I know you all are really excited to do. So as we get onto this slide, thank you all again for all of your great responses. So one of the ways of service is, and kind of looking at it the most basic way possible, is simply to do a helpful act. And that's kind of what we got in some of our responses as well. But there's also the fraternity definition that I want to touch on as well. And the fraternity has this answer in its first purpose, and it's to promote the existence and welfare of the college and university bands and to cultivate at large a wholesome respect for their activities and achievements. Now, there's a lot of words there, and they all kind of play an important purpose. But at the end of the day, it really just boils down to serving the college bands. And that's something that's really cool and unique about our organization. That it's just based, even just the first purpose, on serving our bands and serving the people around us. And it's not just in the first purpose that you see that. You'll also see the teachings of service built throughout our road to wisdom. And here's just a few of them kind of coming out of the road to wisdom. And I want to highlight the second part of the quote of this second quote, that service is a part of our national identity and the cornerstone of our national brand. Essentially, it's what makes Kappa Kappa Psi Kappa Kappa Psi. Your campus probably has dozens of freak organizations, and a lot of them that focus on service. But you also have some that focus more on social and professional pursuits. In fact, your university might even have a handful of the other Greek music organizations like Phi Mu Alpha, Sigma Alpha Iota, and so on. And all of them do great work and plenty of service. But service isn't their core focus like it is for us in Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma. Instead, it's kind of a result of their focus on their own goals. And that's something that I think is really helpful to take a step back and think about, that service is what makes Kappa Kappa Psi its own unique identity. And it's something really unique that makes us who we are. So the importance of service. So there's more reference to service throughout our fraternal creed, our fraternal code of conduct, and it really just emphasizes how central service is to our mission and our day-to-day focus. So I hope that's something, this preamble area is something that gets you excited about being a service chair. Not only do you have the privilege to be a leader in your organization, in your chapter, you really have the chance to show what's unique about Kappa Kappa Psi and make you stand out on a campus community compared to all the other organizations that are vying for our campus and our students' time. So with that, I will pass it on to Paula to talk about selecting worthwhile service projects.
Alrighty. So Chris kind of did a nice overview on just kind of truly what service entails, and just kind of the different aspects of it. But we're going to take a look and dive a little bit deeper into how we can select worthwhile service projects. So one of the things that I loved was seeing when you guys did all your introductions of just the varying level of positions that you guys all hold in your own chapters. So with that being said, when we're looking at how we can define service, service doesn't look the same for every chapter and every band program. So some things that we would want to consider would be physical service projects and non-physical service projects. So thinking about, I think kind of the most common one that comes to mind would be manual labor. So including like setting up chairs, putting out stands, cleaning those up, cleaning the facilities, painting, polishing, all those physical activities that need to get done in order for the band to be successful. But there's also a lot of service projects that are non-physical and non-manual labor projects. So that could be promoting concerts, selling tickets, financial contributions, holding socials, social events and receptions. So all of those things, and I think more often than not, at least my brain always goes to those manual labor projects, and I often forget that selling tickets and promoting concerts also is a form of service as well. So that's just one way to kind of keep track of truly what service projects do you want to do to start off. Because again, it can look different depending on your program, your chapter, and what your campus needs are. Alrighty, so taking a look now, we want to think about when we're kind of creating our service projects and working with our chapters, two different aspects. So this is a great visual that you can use to think about. First, is your service project going to impact the concert bands, the athletic bands, or other bands? And then We also want to circle back to the fact that service to the bands is at our core. So, yes, it does impact our school and our community. But when we're servicing the bands, again, it can be to the concert bands, the athletic bands, and other bands. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to our band program and how that impacts us moving forward. So, when it comes to generating new ideas, sometimes ideas are really great and they have been very successful for many, many years, but other times events are kind of in a rut. We don't want to get stuck always doing the same thing. So before you even start an event, I would recommend looking at the event, seeing what has been successful in the past with it, maybe what things need some improvement, taking a look at where you can fill gaps or what hasn't been in effect or what has been ineffective when putting on this service project. I would also talk to the people that have put this project on and the project or the people that it is impacting. So that could include talking to your band office or your music department, working with graduate assistants and directors, seeing what they need, because that could also be a area where you might not even know that something needs to get done if you're not communicating with those people that need the work done. Especially when it comes to graduate assistants and directors, sometimes they are very upfront and will say, hey, we need you guys to copy all the concert band music for rehearsal starting next week. Or they might not be as upfront and might not know how to communicate that. So always being upfront, kind of asking, hey, what do you need help with? What can we do to help take something off your plate is always a great way to start, and having that open line of communication. I would also encourage you to take a look at how you can help promote upcoming events for the band. So maybe it's for a football game, maybe you're doing a fundraiser at a concert, maybe you're trying to get more people to join your university band. All of those count as service projects. But also, things that you should keep in mind is setting realistic expectations. So, what might work for a very large school and a large chapter of maybe 40, 50 people in their chapter might not work for a smaller band and a smaller chapter of 10 to 15. So, keeping that in mind, that success looks different for each school and each chapter, and kind of based on your chapterology is something to keep in mind as well. If you're kind of stuck in a rut and need ideas, you can always take a look at Appendix A in the Road to Wisdom. Again, the Road to Wisdom has tons of great resources. So instead of trying to think and kind of reinvent the wheel, take a look at the Road to Wisdom because there's tons of great resources. And that link will be posted in the chat in a few minutes as well. So, that being said, taking a look at strategic planning. So, I would recommend, because the school year is just starting, taking a look at really what are 2 to 3 big priorities that you have this year. So, it can start off as a goal of like, hey, do you want to um, collaborate with your treasurer and fundraise $500? Do you want to do 3 meaningful service projects? One for the concert band, one for the athletic bands, and then one for your university band, and then kind of go from there. But I wouldn't take on like something like crazy and unobtainable for your chapters and your band program. So again, I would consider what works best for you and your chapters, but also consider the strengths and weaknesses. So again, I would think back to what is our mission and purposes and how do these service projects align with that? We also want to continually reevaluate our projects as we're going through, because sometimes we're in the middle of something and we might be like, hey, this is a terrible idea, or this is not being successful. Like, we might need to abandon this project, and because it's not meaning or it's not obtainable for our chapter, or make adjustments as needed. So this all ties into our Crown Pearl goals for the fraternity. So when we see our Crown Pearl goals, and we've actually touched on these for every single chop shop that we have put on so far. So all of your, if any of your other officer positions have came to these workshops, you'll see these chapter Crown Pearl goals. And a lot of times these are things that you do already. So when we're talking about our Crown Pearl goals, we're talking about striving for the highest, and that means progress, not perfection. So these are 15 SMART goals that have been created to help grow your organization. So, like I said, a lot of these are things that you probably are already doing, but just highlighting those and showcasing the amazing work that you and your chapter are putting on. So Chris, if you don't mind hitting the next slide, so that way they can see the Crown Pearl goals. So we have 3 sets of goals that you can focus on. So in order to accomplish the Crown Pearl chapter goals, you would need to complete 10 out of the 15 of these. So again, part of this might be working with your other chapter officers for these things. So, like, for instance, the president would be submitting the chapter personnel reports. Your vice president for membership would be submitting your chapter curriculum calendar. So, again, those are things that need to get done as it is. So, chances are your chapter is probably accomplishing more of these than you even realize. But really, the biggest area where you and in your position as a service chair could focus on is highlighting one of your chapter service projects. So that could be during the month of service, or again, that can be just during any time that you're doing something cool. You don't even need to wait around till the month of service. But again, since you're already doing so many of these cool projects, social media is your best friend on where you can steal different ideas from chapters. We were talking about, I think it was at our chapter treasurers training on how you can steal fundraising ideas from other chapters because there's so many great things that are out there. So, with that being said, once you've decided on your projects, you want to make sure that you are being aware of deadlines and starting early. Because if we were starting on a project that is in 2 days from now, it's probably going to be a lot of last minute thrown together details. Whereas if you start ahead of time, even a week, 2 weeks ahead of time, in such as the promotion stage of it, recruiting members to come to that event and help out and volunteer for that, you'll probably have a better turnout. So we don't want to wait until the last minute, especially when it comes to paperwork and projects. So one of the things that I would really recommend is creating a calendar of your service projects. So depending on what it entails, you might need to, if you're doing a band room cleaning, you might need to go out and get supplies. So you might not have time that day to go out and get supplies. So you might need to, again, broadcast that to your chapters and say, hey, in 3 days from now, we're going to do this band room cleaning. Who can help go grab supplies in order to be successful for this event? We would also, if you're working with your DOB and sponsor on specific things, you want to leave time for their feedback as well. And then, if you are assisting with your chapter president or anyone else in the chapter on national paperwork, please work with them ahead of time so that way you're not rushing last minute, making sure that things are accurate. So when it comes to creating a calendar, we actually have a template that Kristen's going to post in the chat in a few minutes of how you can kind of create your ideas ahead of time, thinking about ways that you can branch out and breaking it down to really fall semester and spring semester, or even the summertime of what service projects need to get done, how long ahead of time you would need to complete those, when it comes to the promotion and the publication of the events, and reaching out to brothers that might want to attend that. So this would be a great resource. Again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here, but using this will help kind of plan out. I know a lot of us are probably type A personalities where you love planning, you need a calendar in order to be successful. If you are don't, more power to you, and love that for you. But if this is something that will work for you and your chapter, I would highly encourage you to use this as a resource. So we're gonna talk about bringing your project to life. So how can we take the kind of the ground roots of our ideas and bring it to a reality?
Great. So thanks, Paula, for that kind of introduction to this section. So I'll start off with talking about what we call the 5 Ws of your project. So this is a framework that I encourage you all to keep in mind as you're planning a project. Whether it's explicitly or just keep in the back of your mind, who are we serving? What service are we providing? When is this event going to take place? Where will it take place? And what purposes are we fulfilling? The importance of this is that if you don't have an idea of what you're doing and to basically all these W's, your project can balloon into something larger than it should have been, and potentially something that your chapter may not have the manpower and resources to do successfully. An example of this happened in my chapter when I was graduating. An alumni of our chapter reached out asking for help with their band camp. They knew that our chapter loved to do service, loved to promote leadership, all the things that your chapter probably shares as well. So they asked, hey, can you come in and do a 1 hour talk on leadership to our leadership team? Something nice, simple, just to kind of keep band members engaged over the summer. And we said, yes, we'd love to do it. But a few weeks later, they said, hey, I know you guys are coming to do this hour leadership talk. Would you guys be interested in staying to help with sectionals afterwards? And we said, sure, why not? We're already driving 45 minutes to get to your high school. What does one extra thing hurt? But over time, those one-off questions kept being added on. It was, hey, can you just do this one extra little thing here, this one extra little thing here? Can you stay an extra day? Maybe instead of doing it over 1 day, can you do it over 2 days? In this project, it started off as a 1 hour presentation, ended up turning out turning into us leading every session of the band's 3-day leadership camp. Basically, 24 hours of service was kind of asked of us when we had initially agreed to just do a 1-hour presentation. So this is a perfect example of kind of losing sight of the W's of the project. Within a few days, we kind of lost who we were serving. Are we serving this small group of leadership team members, or are we serving the entire band program and in some ways kind of doing the director's job in that way? What services are we providing? It went from this 1-hour presentation to a 3-day, 8-hour presentation of activities. When are we doing the event? Again, 1 day to 3 days, and you can kind of continue that on. So I'd encourage you guys, especially as you all are service officers, you're going to be having a lot of people reaching out to you saying, hey, we need help doing X, we need help doing Y, we need help doing Z. It's really important to work with your leadership team and your committee to understand these W's. What can you do, when and where, so that you're not ending up in a situation where you're taking on more than you can chew, or you're in a situation where you could have helped more, but you weren't aware that you were able to do that. I'd also encourage you to so once we know what event we're doing, our next goal is to focus on engaging our brothers. So despite being the service chair, you're not going to be the only person who is promoting service. Hopefully you'll have an entire team working with you or your entire chapter working to be sure that service is happening. Now, that being said, you should be one of the most prominent advocates for service in your chapter, because if you're not the person kind of encouraging people to do it, no one's going to think that the projects are required. Now, that being said, like I said, you shouldn't be the only person doing all the work yourself. You should leverage your committee if you have a committee, or just excited service members in your chapter and empower them to grow as leaders. One of the best ways you can do that is using your committee to brainstorm new ideas. So you can start each meeting by asking kind of a simple prompt or problem or question of, hey, what did you guys notice happened with the band last week? What's an area we can put on a service project? And you might find somebody might bring something up that's worth asking. Maybe somebody will say, yeah, the stands in my rehearsal, they all kept falling down, and one of the directors made a comment about how our stands are really in need of repair. Or, oh, we realized that the people who set up the water jugs at our university's marching band rehearsal, they were late, so we only had 1 water jug instead of 3, and that kind of sucked. So little things like that, just hearing where there's kind of grumblings and inconveniences is a great way to create a new project to serve the band. So you can also use your committee to evaluate past goals, and this is something that's very important. You can ask questions like, hey, how did the last project go? What went well? How could we have done things better? And the more comfortable you and your team get giving that feedback, the better projects will be in the long run. Because you may have seen one side of things, and the people serving saw something slightly different. You may feel, oh, I communicated things really well, everyone knew exactly what was going on. And somebody on the team may have felt differently, that, oh, I didn't feel that as well. Or maybe you're someone who's a little harder on yourself and said, I think this project was terrible. It was one of the worst projects I put together. And everybody who saw it, they didn't see the struggles you may have been having. They go, no, I think things went pretty well. So it's just a good way to ensure that you're evaluating projects and make sure everyone's on the same page of how to grow as leaders. Now, you can also use, and this is one thing that I am really passionate about, and I hope you all can do it as well, is delegating tasks to your committee members. Like I said, you don't have to be the only person leading service in your organization. There are a lot of outstanding brothers, especially when you get membership candidates, who just really want to learn and grow and be the best service-minded brothers they can be. So if you find somebody who's really excited about leading a particular project or leading projects in general, I'd encourage you to give them those opportunities to lead and grow and develop themselves. It's not always going to go perfect the first time, especially if you're working with a brother who is maybe a membership candidate or a little bit newer in their leadership journey, but that's okay. Your goal can be less planning every day-to-day project and more supporting people as they learn to grow as leaders. And last thing is brother engagement. So I'd encourage you so getting brothers excited about your service projects is one of the hardest things that you'll face as a service chair probably. And that's something I'm sure is going to come up a few times in the Q&A of, hey, I have these amazing projects. How can I get my brothers involved? So the first thing I would say is to communicate early about any projects you have. This gets back to what Paula mentioned earlier. If you say, hey, we're cleaning the water jugs tonight in 2 hours, you might get 1 or 2 people who show up, but it's not going to be the full amount of people who otherwise would have. If you say, hey, we're cleaning our water jugs in 3 weeks, you'll get a little bit more help. People can move their schedules around. And if there's a day that doesn't work, maybe you can move it to a day that works better for everybody else. I'd also encourage you to explain the purpose behind your project. And I guess starting to make sure that every project you do has some sort of is purposeful. It meets one of Kappa Kappa Psi's 5 purposes. And be sure you're really explaining that to your chapter. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to meet on Friday to clean the water jugs, I'll go back to that example. I would explain it something more of, hey, it's our responsibility for the band to clean out the water jugs and make sure everyone has safe drinking water. We don't want anyone getting sick because they drank the wrong jug of water. So a part of that is doing a deep clean of our water jugs every 2 weeks or every month or whatever that looks like for your chapter. So we're going to be meeting Friday night so that the band can have that, so it can be as safe as possible when coming to rehearsal. Now, that may not get everybody super excited, but at least you're explaining the why and the purpose and what the benefit is of doing that project. Cleaning the water jugs is no longer this thing they're required to do, but there's actually a clear, tangible benefit to the band. And finally, I'd encourage you to call out brothers who will go above and beyond in their service. Thank them in front of the chapter, and let them know that their time, their services were valued. You may find, oh, I've noticed that Paula's been on the last 3 or 4 of these presentations. I would say, hey, thanks, Paula, for doing this. And thanks for presenting the fraternity resources and responsibilities section that we keep assigning her that's not the most fun to talk about. So just kind of thanking people when they do things, it'll encourage other people in your chapter to go, oh, I kind of want to be thanked too. I want that kind of nice being recognized. It'll encourage people to go above and beyond as they're going forward. So next thing is resilience and flexibility. So once you know the vision for your project, it's time to start going about planning the event. Now, as you're planning, I encourage you to remember one thing: something is going to go wrong. It's not an if, something is going to go wrong in your project. I was trying to think of a project over my time as an active that went perfectly flawlessly. Every person showed up the exact time they said. There were no logistical issues. Everything went perfectly. And I can't really think of a single one. Maybe one where it was only one person doing the job and they didn't tell me something went wrong. And that's something I'd encourage you to kind of recognize early as you're going into your journey. Something will go wrong with your project, and it's not something you did wrong, or it's not something that brother who was there at the project did wrong. That's just the nature of planning ahead. So I'd encourage you to be sure that you're always thinking of a plan B and C and D and E for your events. What should I do if one person shows up instead of the 2 that we expected? Can that project even still be done? And also think about what are some of the areas that are most likely to go wrong. Maybe setting up for a football game, you should say, hey, remember, there's going to be traffic coming. I know that's a simple thing and maybe a silly thing to tell to your active brothers, but just a little thing to remind people so they can say, oh yeah, traffic is going to be bad going to a football game. It's going to be harder to get to our stadium today than it would have been the night before the game. So just doing your best to anticipate those challenges and offer some suggestions around it. It's also helpful if maybe you have a service chair who's still active in your chapter to reach out to them and ask, hey, what went wrong? So you can anticipate what happened again. Maybe there's the same problem that goes wrong with your event every year, and the service chair at the time thinks, oh, I'll tell the next person that this goes wrong, and they kind of forget about it 6 months later. You can just get ahead of that and make sure that any issues that happened in the past are planned for and built around so that your team can be successful and you can kind of learn and grow, not repeat the same mistakes year after year. I'd also encourage you to decentralize the decision-making process, especially for events that you're not able to make yourself. I'd encourage you to recognize a few people on your team or trusted brothers. Identify people who are quick to adapt when there's a change. If you're trying to get into a certain locked room and your brand director promises you they're going to give you the key or that room's going to be unlocked, try and figure out, hey, what can I do if that's unlocked? Or have somebody who kind of knows the next steps. So I'd encourage you just to kind of identify those brothers who can think quick on their feet and be sure at least one of them is at your project to make sure things go smoothly. And the last thing is as you're going through the planning process, I'd encourage you to maybe identify one brother or like kind of tell one brother, hey, you're kind of playing devil's advocate here. I want you to identify everything could go wrong with what we're saying. Or have your whole team do that. Say, take maybe a minute in your planning process and say, hey, I know we've been talking about this, but what are things that are most likely to go wrong so we can build around them? Now, the idea isn't for that person to go, oh, Kristen, you're doing a terrible job with this presentation. Everything you're doing is terrible, and this is going to be an awful project. It's to say, hey, I think it's weird that we're we're trying to run this project the exact same time our concert band meets. because the members who like to do this type of project are going to be involved in that concert band ensemble. Maybe we need to move the date and time to a time that works better for everybody else. Now you can see the difference. It's not attacking the people planning the project. It's just saying, hey, here's how we can make our project stronger. So I'd encourage you to approach it from that perspective of how can we be better, as opposed to attacking the project or the person attacking the project. And that comes with practice and just being upfront about what you want out of the constructive feedback. And I talked a little bit about this, so I won't spend too much time on it, but evaluating your event. Be sure that before you start planning the next project, or while you're planning the next project, you're evaluating the successes and areas of growth of the project that you just ran. So think about what went well. Be sure to discuss what could be, and also be sure to discuss what can be improved. We don't want these discussions to turn into, yeah, everything was perfect. It was amazing. We did a great job presenting. Alternatively, we don't also want it to be attacking ourselves. We want to find that happy, honest medium of these things objectively went well, and we should do them next time we put on a project. But these things didn't go so well. Maybe we didn't do a good job of planning ahead. Maybe we didn't do a good job of communicating to our chapter in advance, so not that many people showed up. And that's using these projects as learning opportunities, so each one progressively gets better as the year goes on. And then lastly, I'd encourage you to document as much as you can for your future, both for yourself and for your future brothers. Hopefully some of you guys maybe have like a project database or like a list of documents that your chapter usually does. And hopefully it says things like, hey, here's some challenges that we run into every year. And if you don't, I highly encourage you in your chapter to start one. That way the new VPS who follows you or service chair who follows you has the opportunity to, they don't have to start everything from scratch. They don't have to brainstorm every idea and kind of anticipate every challenge that'll come up. They have the lessons you learned along the way to make things better for them. Last thing in my section is accountability. So I think it's important as a service chair to hold yourself and your chapter accountable in a positive and constructive way. So while you as service chair are probably going to be in the weeds on a lot of the service work, you can't lead a chapter if they don't show up and if you don't show up. If you're the service chair and you're kind of the I want to say kind of the pillar, the visualization of what service should look like. That's why you may have been elected or appointed in that position, because you love service and you're going above and beyond in service. If you don't show up to things, members of your chapter are going to realize, oh, this specific project isn't important. Or if you don't emphasize the importance of it or tell why it's purposeful, people are going to think this project isn't as central as another one that our service chair isn't going to. Or if they're a newer brother trying to impress their service chair, they're not going to show up to ones that the service chair doesn't show up to. I'd also encourage you to set deadlines and share what you are working on. So part of this is being sure that when you say, hey, I'm going to host a project, that project actually happens and happens around the time you said it would happen. Because as service chairs, we're going to have a lot of people asking things of us, saying, hey, I'm a professor at your university. I would love you to do this project. Oh, I'm your director of bands. I want you to do that project. It's really tempting to say yes to all of them. As a people pleaser myself, it's really easy to just try and say yes to everything and then figure out how to do it later. And that leads to the burnout that we talked about on that first slide, where where you end up putting yourself in a negative position to meet the needs of everybody else. So I encourage you to set those deadlines so you know what's on your plate and what you can accomplish, and let people know what you're working on, so that if you can't do something, you have a clear reason why of, sorry, we're doing these other projects. We just don't have enough manpower. And you're not being that person saying, no, I don't want to do your project. There's a reason why it's not happening. Last thing is I'd encourage you to create a brave space where it's okay to make mistakes, especially for yourself and the people on your committee. One of the things I love about Kappa Kappa Psi is it's really a place where you can learn to grow and become a leader. While every project may feel critical kind of when you're in that boat, not every single one will make or ruin your band program. Setting up water jugs, for example, for your marching band, or repairing stands for your concert band. If all the jugs don't fully get set up every time exactly when they need to, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to be as pleasant for some of the band members, and they may have a little bit of grumbling if you set up 2 jugs instead of 3, or if you only repair half of the stands. But that's a great learning opportunity for the brother who is in charge of that project. They can realize, oh, asking the chapter to set up the jugs in 5 minutes, that's not enough time. Maybe I need to give them 10 or 15 minutes. Or, oh, we only had 2 people show up to repair the stands. We actually need 3 or 4 for the next project. So while it's a very kind of low risk projects that you can set up in Kappa Kappa Psi. So I encourage you to really set up positions where you can put new leaders in those positions to either succeed and have a really good project or fail in a way that's low risk to your chapter. And that's a really unique thing about being a service chair is you have the opportunity to train the next generation of leaders and get them to the point where they feel comfortable putting on whether it's a service project, a brotherhood project, or a social project. You get the opportunity to get them comfortable doing those things. And lastly, we've talked about this, I'm not going to spend much time on it either, is discussing, figure out the best way to give and receive feedback. Know what works for you, what works for your chapter, and work kind of operate in those areas. So I will turn it back over to Paula to talk about a year in the life of a service chair.
All right. So one of the things that we've hit on a lot throughout this call is how to plan ahead of time. So what we're going to take a look at is how we can look at the whole year at a glance. And I know that might sound overwhelming and kind of a big daunting task, but we're going to break this down into summer, fall, winter, and spring of just different tasks that could kind of go into each section of the school year. So looking at the summer, probably starting off with maybe different planning meetings. I know a lot of chapters already start off each summer with a summer meeting, whether that's in like the June, July months to prepare for band camp, or even that's just arriving a few days early. So again, starting early is key. When it comes to the fall, a lot of schools have athletic band service projects. Sometimes concert band starts around that time, and different small ensembles that you can hit. Or springtime, there's also spring bands with concert bands and other small ensembles. And then the winter time would just be planning, evaluating, and examining those. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper on what things you can do during the summer break. And I know obviously for a lot of schools, you're just starting off the school year, so summer break may seem like a long time away for you to start planning this, but this would be something great if your term is going to be ending by the time summer starts, that you can include this in your transition documents. So the summertime is really the time to get most of the planning done, most of that like nitty-gritty work. Done ahead of time. So that could be outlining service goals, working through the scope of that work with your other officers and your director of band and sponsors. So that could be kind of determining what your attendance policy for would be. Would it be attending 5 service events throughout the semester? Is it mandating that there's specific service projects that you everyone in the chapter has to go to versus ones that are suggested to go to? And then thinking about what the service requirements are throughout the school year, and then thinking about what could be some major projects that your director of bands is looking for. I know we hit on those earlier in the call of reaching out and having that open line of communication with your DOBs because they may have things coming up on their radars that you guys might not even know about in the chapter and that they might need some specific help with. And then also taking a look at what the requirements are in order to host those specific events. So that could be reserving rooms, getting permission for those specific events, contacting people, especially if you're doing something on campus, you might need to reserve some room space, or you might need to go through maybe your music department to get special approvals. I know one of the events that we hosted at Mount Union was a tuba Christmas, so there was a lot of different avenues that we had to go through in order to get that event to be successful and to get that event started. So that included reserving the space for it. That included working with the Tuba Christmas company in order to get music, in order to get the merchandise, all of the registration in going down. So there was a lot of different avenues and a lot of different groups that we had to work with, and it was a great learning experience because we honestly had no idea the caliber of that event, but that was something that our DOB brought to us at the time and said, hey, I've done this at some of my other schools. I really think this would be a great event and a great fundraiser. And you also get to showcase the fun things that you guys are doing with members of the community as well. And it was one of my favorite events that we did throughout my time at Mount Union. So jumping ahead to the fall, which is where everyone is at right now. So we want to think ahead again of being clear of what you're responsible for during the fall semester. So again, if it's overwhelming for you to think of the whole entire school year, just focus on the semester that you're currently on. So starting with the fall, I would at least try to meet with your DOB around this time to finalize any major projects. So again, you might have already organized move-in and band camp, and the equipment inventory and uniforms. But thinking about what other things come up, especially if you have a marching band on your campus or even a fall like kind of university or concert band. What are those day-to-day things that maybe you don't think of kind of automatically when it comes to that? So what could be service projects for that? Could it be um, logging and tagging equipment inventory? Could it be copying music for those events? So really think about what are those things that might be forgotten or might be hidden amongst your band program. Another thing that I would also recommend is leaving something for the next person that's going to take over your position. So I think we've all kind of can think of different times where we've been in positions where maybe we've gotten a lot of information on how to do the position, and maybe you've gotten nothing in terms of transition documents. So I would recommend after each service project that you're doing, creating like a kind of how-to, kind of like a Cliff Notes version of if you were ever not there for that project, that somebody would be able to replicate that again. And that could also be a great transition document. And doing it after the event would be something great because then you're not trying to scramble around months after the fact when it comes to transition time, where it's still very fresh in your mind. You're still going to be able to remember all those little details that maybe you would have forgotten moving forward. Other things that to consider is setting monthly goals for both large and small events with your chapters. So things to take a look at for winter break, which again, winter break probably seems so long from now, but taking a look at winter break, so that would be a great time to discuss spring service projects. So again, meeting with your DOB and sponsor, seeing and the music department, seeing what would you need for those specific projects. So I know spring semester often means basketball bands, hockey bands, if you have a hockey team at your school. So thinking about what would be those playoff logistics, what would you need in order to make that event be successful, but that also means concert season and convention time. So thinking about what would be held on your campus, and then also reflecting back on the success of the events that you did in the fall, and how you can make those even better for the springtime. So again, like we mentioned, preparing transition documents and writing reflections after each event. Other things that would be really helpful is if your chapter is interested in having a service committee, that could be something as well that you could even delegate some of those tasks of, hey, I'm going to have Chris be in charge of check-in for this event with these two brothers. Kristen, I'm going to have you send out all the emails for the lead work ahead of time. And then Kadeem, I'm going to have you be the point person for behind the scenes during that event. So kind of giving people different roles will help empower members of your chapter to feel more ownership and have that sense of responsibility in order to make that event be successful. So taking a look at the spring semester. So spring semester is going to be very similar to the fall semester as well, where again, reviewing expectations now, seeing what's going to be different from the fall, since the fall might have had marching band, and you probably won't have marching band in the spring. So updating your chapter and committee on those upcoming events, but we want to again give them some leeway ahead of time, because if you're saying, hey, we're going to have this event on Wednesday and it is Tuesday, you might not have a lot of people because people might have class. Your brothers might have prior commitments. So giving them that notice ahead of time is going to be huge. You'll have a better turnout if your brothers know ahead of time for the events and the expectations placed upon them. And then you will also want to start recruiting a successor for your position if you are doing or if you do elections in the springtime. So consider who has really stepped up, who might be a great service chair or a great vice president for programs. Again, depending on whatever position your chapter has. So think about somebody that seems really passionate about service or that was played a huge role. Again, it might not be the person that's the front and center, but maybe they're really good at the organization and those little details. Sometimes those brothers that maybe are not the most outgoing, but really great with the organization, the nitty-gritty, the details, kind of those workhorses of the chapter are the best service chairs because they will think of everything, especially those little details. So consider who you would want to tap into to be your successor. And sometimes they just need that invitation and kind of that extra helping hand to say, hey, Chris, you did a really great job with this service project where we were helping to load the buses for our hockey band. I think you would be a great service chair, so maybe you should consider running for this. And that might just be the little nudge that Chris needs in order to apply for that position. So, as we've mentioned a lot about officer transitions. So, one of the things that will be helpful when it comes to officer transitions is having that strong culture of service continue in your chapters. So, again, when it comes to officer transitions, you'll want to meet with your director and new service chair over the summer, and probably your president as well, to kind of outline the goals and ideas that they want to accomplish moving forward. So, when it comes to that, you might want to have a transition meeting with that person because there's probably going to be a lot of things that they might not even consider when it comes to service. So, maybe making a binder or a Google Drive of information could be really helpful as well. So outlining things that, like, hey, this service event was successful because of X, Y, and Z, or this event was not successful because it was a total dumpster fire. We did not have anyone come. It was during concert band, and we had two people show up for an event that needed 15 people. So thinking about how you can improve those events moving forward, and then if you're person that's taking over your position is maybe somebody that's newer or maybe a first or second year student and maybe they don't know as many people, you can also introduce them to specific faculty and staff. So I know one of the things that we would always do is we became very good friends and very close acquaintances with our administrative assistant for the music program because she was kind of the go-to on how to reserve rooms, how to kind of monopolize the copier when we needed to do those things. So again, making friends and having good acquaintances with those key people are going to be instrumental. And I would also, if you know somebody else in another chapter of, hey, I know that Kristen is the service chair at Robert Morris and I'm the service chair at Iota Lambda, connecting those people with the service chairs in other chapters in order to make those connections as well would be huge, especially if you see them at district convention and you can say, hey, I'm thinking of running for this position. Do you want to tell me what your chapter does? Making those acquaintances and those connections are going to help your chapter become very successful. So, in order to have your chapter become successful, we have a lot of fraternity resources and responsibilities that are already there and in place to help you. So, again, we don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel. So, all of these things that we're going to go over in the next section are things that are already made and already created for you so that way you don't have to spend time looking for all of these resources.
So we'll start off with the responsibility side of things and then get into the fun of the resources. So one of the first responsibilities that's imposed on your chapter that you have a responsibility to kind of support is the fall activity report. So the fall activity report is used to collect information about all the chapter's activities from the period of May 1st, so about 3 months ago, till November 1st. And what this asks is, what is every service project? What is every recruitment event? What is every music project that your chapter has put on during that time period? So as you're going through the year, we talked a lot about documenting things so that the next officer can be as successful as possible. We also encourage you to document things so you can be as successful as possible. Because your president is likely to come to you and say, hey, can you make a list of every project that you specifically put on or your team put on between over that period? And it's going to ask questions like, what was the name of the project? What did you do? How did it benefit? Why was it purposeful? And then like, what community did it help to serve? So I'd encourage you to start taking those notes as you're going through the year so that when things come up, usually this happens around Thanksgiving break. And around Thanksgiving break, at least in my university, was when we had a lot of exams. We were prepping for finals. All our projects were due. It's not the time you want to spend a bunch of your free hours working on paperwork. It just helps you set yourself up so that you're ready when that time comes. The important stuff for here is that to remind your president, who's usually responsible for the form, that it requires sponsor and director of band approval. So your sponsor and director of bands need to approve it by December 1st. It doesn't need to be submitted to them by December 1st. So I'd encourage you to think ahead, be sure you're working on this in advance so that you're not giving yourself or your chapter or your director of bands a little bit of panic as you're getting closer to the start of December. So this is something that's will be submitted via Opus, and will probably be the responsibility of your president, but we just want to be sure you know about it in advance. We also have the spring activity report, which copy everything I said in the last slide and paste it here. The big difference is that it works between November 1st to May 1st. So it just covers the entire year of your or your chapter's programming. Now, I'd encourage you, kind of last thought on this whole thing is as you're going through this, especially if you're the person writing the responses for the service events, I'd encourage you to don't make it a last minute thing where you're typing one sentence responses for what you did or why you did it. I'd really encourage you to use this as a time to sell the great work that your chapter is doing. Instead of saying, oh, we did, using kind of a marching band example of, oh, we cleaned our jugs 3 times over the course of the year. That's great information. But when people look at it, and this is something that's used to help with district and national award recognitions, if you say something like, oh, we did a deep clean of the water jugs 3 times throughout the year, and because of this, our band was able to have clean, healthy drinking water, and it's the marching band's leadership team didn't have to do the work, so it freed them up to be prepared to give a successful rehearsal. It's little things like that that just take your chapter's projects to the next level and really helps you stand out at the national level. Next thing is the Founders Circle. So the Founders Circle is one of the resources that is available to your chapters. So this is something that it's designed to help you grow during your leadership journey. So there are 3 different levels of the Founders Circle that's designed to track the 3 different levels you may see as you're advancing in your leadership journey as a brother. The first one is the individual level. And the idea behind this is how can you as an individual find your leadership style and lead by example in the way that a lot of us do as brothers, but it's to help some of the younger members figure out who they are and how they can lead in as people who may not necessarily have a title at that point. Then as you're continuing in your leadership journey, you may end up being in charge of a committee or being a section leader in your band. This is a perfect time for the second level, the group level of the Founders Circle. It's, hey, how can I lead a small group and be sure that we're as successful as possible? What are the things I need to remember to hold people accountable to be sure that they're excited to come to committee meetings every week or show up to rehearsal with their music memorized every week? And the final level is the visionary level. And this is something that really tracks as you're becoming maybe a member of your chapter's executive board, or as you're becoming a drum major or a president or founder of some other organization that's not even related to Kappa Kappa Psi. And this is designed to help you understand how to just set the vision to not just do what has been done in the past, but really set a vision and make the organization your own so it's reaching new heights that it's never seen before potentially. So you can access the Founder Circle materials using the QR code linked below, and I see Kristen threw a link into the chat. It's basically a Google Drive of a bunch of resources that can help you or your leadership, maybe a leadership chair in your chapter, put on leadership presentations to make your chapter as successful as possible. Lastly, we have our chapter resources folder. So this is something designed by our chapter field representatives to give you hopefully every resource you might need to be successful. So it has information on being engaged at the district and national level, some information like kind of PDFs and like JPEGs, photos of how you can have the things like our national logo, kind of like the thing you see up top here. So you can be sure you're aligning with our national brand. Officer trainings like these, we have probably a lot of the slideshows posted, and we'll definitely post all of the presentations, these recordings. So maybe if you found this presentation to be really helpful and maybe your president would have loved it, but they couldn't make it, you can show them the link to the president chat. Or we also have information on fostering wellness and a whole other variety of resources. Now, I'd encourage you guys, if you're reading through it and you see a resource that we didn't provide, I'd encourage you to reach out to Kristen, and it'll be an email on the next slide, and send it her way. There's a great chance that we love to feature resources that are made by active brothers, and we're happy to develop new resources as they're needed, but we love even more to showcase your chapter, the great work you do, and show kind of live examples instead of our teams creating them, hoping it's something that matches your needs. And more, I forgot to show that, but that's a great plug that there's plenty more in there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen to turn us over to Q&A.
Perfect. Paula, Chris, thank you so much for such a great presentation. Everyone, I hope you found something to take away from it. And as Chris mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us throughout the year at leadershipdevelopment@kkpsi.org. If you're having a challenge, if there's a question that you want to talk through, we're always happy to help be a sounding board. We also want to hear about the things that are going well. What are you proud of as a chapter? What's a service project that you're really enjoying? Last year, we started to roll out the Service Spotlight program, which our National Committee on Programs will be bringing back this biennium. biennium. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for. How can you highlight the great work that your chapter is doing, but also potentially be rewarded with some money for your chapter budget, which is always a nice plus. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording, and this time is yours. Ask us questions, brainstorm, share some ideas that you had. We're here for you.